Thank you, Mr Chairman. I rise in favour of the amendments in the name of the Right Honourable Member for Doncaster North, who I must say made a very impressive opening speech on Monday. And those of us elected in 2015 are old enough to remember when we were told we'd get chaos if he was elected as Prime Minister. As I look at the current government, the word chaos feels like an understatement. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, although I represent a West London seat, I know that many of my constituents care deeply about the union of the four nations in the UK, about the UK's reputation, and about the credibility of the UK and the rule of law. This debate is not about whether you support or oppose Brexit, but saying that I voted against triggering Article 50 back in 2017 because I knew that it would take time to sort out the nuts and bolts of Brexit, and I knew then we had a long way to go. But, Mr. Chairman, we've only got a few weeks now, a couple of months, 3 months, until we leave the EU single market, and as we can see from the mess in this bill, there's still an awful long way to go. And that hits business, that hits people, that hits our nations. This debate is, however, about the issue of how our government approaches devolution and its entire approach to our future relations with the devolved nations, but also our current and future trade partners, which is, in my view, deeply flawed. The bill in itself is an act of self-destruction in the middle of a destructive pandemic. In the clauses we speak about today in this bill, we will see powers and money and pulled away from the devolved nations, while we're all caught up in a race to the bottom of standards. On devolution, the government's white paper claims that it would legislate in a way that, and I quote, respects the devolution statement. However, as many have already said in this debate, this bill does the exact opposite. This, and with due respect to the speaker before me, I'm sorry, I disagree. This bill leads to a significant recentralisation of power away from the devolved administrations and back to Whitehall, undermining so many of the very many benefits and the core principles of devolution. I will.
Honourable Lady, I'm going to try asking this question again, as a number of colleagues have on the east side of the House. Which specific laws, or powers, that the Welsh Government and the Scottish Government already have is being completely taken away? Because as I'm reading clause 47, it says to provide financial assistance, and so I don't understand how assistance means completely taking power away. Assistance means to assist.
I'm happy to respond to the honourable member opposite, Mr. Chairman. Clause 46 very specifically says that a Minister of the Crown may, out of money provided by Parliament, provide financial assistance to any person or in connection with any of the following purposes, and it goes on. The power is all in the government minister, not that is taking power away from the devolved governments. So we know that this is a government that enjoys hoarding power and that consistently ignores devolved government, whether it's local councils, City Hall or devolved governments. Centralisation, centralisation, centralisation is the mantra from this government. And it has been since 2010 when they came in. So secondly, on financial assistance, this bill, as I say, hoards financial assistance for our devolved nations back to the centre, and I support the amendments to clause 47 in the name of Her Majesty's opposition. Financial assistance provided in areas covered by a devolved administration must work with the devolved administrations. We cannot and should not see yet another power grab away from our devolved governments. A central plank of our devolution settlement has been the right of devolved areas to set their own priorities. Yet this bill undermines these by giving government ministers the power to provide funding over a wide range of issues, from culture to sport to economic development. Madam Chairman, many of the people who voted in red wall seats and changed their allegiance this time, but many of the reasons people voted the way they did in the red wall seats, according to the polling, was because they felt divorced from Westminster and Whitehall. And that is true of the people in the devolved countries. And of course, in Scotland and Northern Ireland, they voted strongly away from this government and also away from Brexit in the referendum. This devolution power is only going to further make people in the UK feel further divorced from decision-making that affects their lives, culture, sport, economic development, etc., etc. The explanatory notes on the bill even accept this and say that these powers, quote, fall within wholly or partly devolved areas, unquote. But don't take my word for it. The Welsh Government called this an attack on democracy and an affront to the people of Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, who have voted in favour of devolution on numerous occasions. I now want to address state aid because we've witnessed a rather interesting piece of spin from the government and their supporters. One of the central aims of this bill, and indeed one of the central reasons why this government is embarking on it breaking international law, is because they want to overrule the provisions of state aid rules that apply in Northern Ireland. And let's not forget that this is something our own government agreed to in their so-called oven-ready deal. What's even more concerning is that for the years that the UK was an EU member, successive Conservative governments had an almost allergic attitude to state aid. In 2017, France spent almost half as much more than the UK on state aid, and Germany spent a staggering 4 times as much as the UK on state aid. So why the sudden magic about state aid? It's never been something the Conservatives have been very interested in. To the detriment of UK businesses, UK innovation and UK enterprise. The government know that if they have genuine and sincere problems about state aid, that is exactly what the Joint Committee exists for. So once again, we see the government using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. And I want to finish on this bill because, frankly, the buck should stop with the Prime Minister. He knows the damage this bill would do to the Union. He knows the damage this bill would do to the UK's international reputation and to the rule of law. This bill sets up confrontation with the EU. 40% of our international trade is with EU countries. It sets up a standoff with the courts. It's an attack on the rule of law, and it undermines the UK's commitment to rules-based international order. Thank you.